And so I'm hoping that all of our peers and Arlene is on the line. I think they are. I think I saw their names pop up at some point. I just wanted to introduce each one of them briefly. And then, if any of them want to add anything to that once we start our panel discussion, please feel free to do that. So as part of our panel, we have Arlene Howe. Arlene is a family member with lived experience and a member of Mom Stop the Harm Kelowna. She's also on our Interior Health Boost Steering Committee. We also today have Erin Greer on the line. Erin is participating in the panel today as someone with lived experience accessing OAT. Erin is a 22-year-old in recovery, and Erin is from Penticton, BC, and has been taking OAT for the past 6 years, I believe. We also have Heather Spence on the line today. Heather Spence identifies as an Indigenous peer expert with a multitude of lived experiences. Heather is a creator of an Indigenous-led peer support group and has worked in the peer field for the last 3 years. Heather's passion is to provide support and meet peers where they are at without judgment. We also have Jessica Lamb here today. Some of you may know Jessica, sorry. Jessica works as a peer lead development coordinator at the AIDS Network Kootenay Outreach and Support Society, and as a co-founder, coordinator, and advocate at the East Kootenay Network of People Who Use Drugs. Jessica has been involved with Boost for some time now and is a member of the Boost Steering Committee as well. We also have Carla here today. Carla is a certified peer support worker with People Lived Experience Society at Okanagan Regional Library located in Rutland. Carla has over 23 years experience with substance use, mental health, trauma, and homelessness. After receiving all sorts of help, support, treatment, and education over the years, Carla has successfully been in recovery. Carla joined and completed training a few months ago to become a certified peer support worker and has been trying to spread knowledge and awareness and to support others. We also have Mike Merritt on the line, and we've heard from him already a little bit. Mike is a person with several years of lived experience. Mike has learned to be very open and honest because if it can help one person, it's worth it. I just wanted to say a big thank you to our panel members, first off, for taking the time to join today. I know that sometimes, it's not easy to share these experiences, but we're really thankful that you were willing to participate today. And I also wanted to thank Jessica. Jessica's helped to plan the session for today and to come up with the questions, and she'll be facilitating with me today. So today's panel discussion is really just meant to be a casual space for the panel members to share their experiences and insights. So Jessica and I will take turns asking questions. I do realize that we ideally would have a lot more time to speak with the panel members. So hopefully we get to most of our questions and we can hear from all of them, and we'll do our best to do that. So just before we start, I'm going to end my slideshow here so that we can see everyone's faces. And I think, we will just, the best way to do this is to kind of ask the questions, which as I mentioned, Jessica and I will be doing that. And then any of the panel members can jump in first if they want to do so. So the first question that we have for today is, please briefly describe your life prior to OAT and what was life like? Who wants to jump in first?
I'd like to jump in from a totally different perspective. My son died in 2015 prior to the declaration of a state of emergency due to the opioid crisis. He tried NA, AA, rehab several times, never OAT, because in 2015 when he passed, it wasn't, just like fentanyl, wasn't a big word on our lips. But I truly believe that if Stephen had had an opportunity to participate in an OAT program, that there would be potential for him to be alive today. I think if he could have been free of the chains that bound him in his substance use and in his cravings, which I sadly didn't understand much about until I became an advocate, that he could have had a much more successful life. He could have provided a life for himself. I think, well, I have more to say as more questions come up, but yeah, I think he absolutely would have. And I think a lot of our kids would still be alive had they been offered this kind of opportunity. So thank you all for doing what you do.
Thanks, Arlene. Anyone else from the panel group wanna?
Good afternoon. Hi.
Hello.
Hi. I'll try and be brief. I've had a long history of substance use disorder and mental health issues, starting at the age of 12 for over 23 years. Throughout my life, I've experienced many forms of abuse, countless traumatic experiences, bullying, neglect, eating disorders, suicidal thoughts and attempts, deaths in my family, seizures from panic, intimate partner violence, becoming a mom at the young age of 18. I've experienced homelessness, living in a shelter, drug psychosis, criminal activity, PTSD, lost my career of 12 years, 4 treatment centers, and I reached my absolute bottom and had the gift of desperation to want to try recovery. So that's basically describing how I got here.
Thanks so much, Carla. Anyone else? Heather, Mike,
Erin.
Aaron?
I guess I'll give a bit about my story. It's not, I don't want to take up too much time because I'm sure I already did on my last few comments, but I went through a lot of stuff when I was adopted, and I met my birth mother when I was in my early 20s and found out I had a brother 2 years older than me. And then I moved from Calgary to Vancouver to meet him and get closer with him. And about 6 months after I moved out here, he passed away. And I think that was the beginning of my downward spiral, because about 2 years, he was 2 years older than me. And then 2 years after he passed away, I almost passed away from the same thing, a withdrawal seizure. And after that, I went into treatment, tried treatment for a few times, was in and out. But then after treatment, I had nowhere to go. My girlfriend at the time broke up with me while I was in treatment. So when I got out, I didn't have anywhere to go. So I ended up on the street for a couple of years. And that's when I started getting back into the harder stuff, because it was so hard to find housing. It was so hard to do anything. I had moved from Calgary. I'd left everything behind and I had nothing. So that's what kind of got me going. And then, like I had already told you earlier about the support from my family and my sister hunting me down and all that, I'll skip all the other stuff. And then with this program, it just gave me hope again, is a big thing. And it just showed me that my family's not embarrassed or scared or any of that. And so that's a bit about my story. And now I'm doing well. I'm 2 years clean. And that's my story so far. So we'll see how it ends. But I just want everyone to know there is hope and there is a chance, and never give up. That's all. So thanks.
Thanks so much, Mike.
Erin, did you want to comment on what life was like before OAT?
I think, I guess I'll just I think just in terms of like my addiction, I think OAT just made things like a little steadier for me, and it just made things everything a little bit easier. Like it didn't solve everything, but it just made, like wanting to go to treatment or go to detox, or get clean. It just made everything a little easier and a little less hard, just because like withdrawal wasn't as bad and the cravings weren't as bad. So yeah, it was just a little harder before.
Awesome. Thanks, Erin. So the next question we have is, why did you get on OAT? And it's kind of like a multi-part question, so we can always repeat it as well. So it's, why did you get on OAT, and was it your choice? And did you have a choice in the medication that was offered to you? And were there side effects and of the medication, and were those discussed with you beforehand? So yeah, I guess the first one is, why did you get on OAT? And was it your choice?
Sure, I'll go real brief. Yeah, it was my choice. I got on it because I didn't want to experience like the withdrawals, getting sick. I saw the grip it held on my best friend, and for many years of his life, he went through horrible withdrawals when he couldn't find his DOC. It was beginning to happen with me. I became more and more physically dependent. This was one of the reasons, along with the constant gamble of possibly OD and seeing it happen.
Thanks, Carla. And I guess what we mean by like, was it your choice is, I guess, did you feel pressured into getting on OAT is what we're really asking. But Mike or Erin, would you like to comment on that?
I didn't feel pressured. I felt it was something I needed to do to not let everybody down. And this was before I started realizing that I needed to do this for myself, not just everybody else. So no, I didn't feel pressure. It was suggested to me, it was from my doctor, my family doctor. And then that's when I met with Dr. Baldwin, who was very supportive, actually in the past month, I've gone by his office, my pharmacist, and thanked them for all the help, because it takes a team, it really does. And he gave me different options. There was Caden, there was Suboxone, there were a lot of different things. And I just pretty much put myself in his hands and made a promise to myself and my family and my puppy, and that I'm going to see it through. And Baldwin was there through the whole thing. He warned me about side effects, and I have a story about horrible time. I went to Calgary to see my girlfriend, and I didn't know, the one thing I didn't know is you can go through withdrawals from the medication. And I was in Calgary and I miscalculated because I was up to 37 pills a day. And my last 2 days I ran out and I was stuck in Calgary. And thank God for her and the kids, because I was shaking, I couldn't sleep. And then I had an 8-hour bus ride back home, withdrawing the entire time. It was horrible. And then I got picked up in Salmon Arm. So I got another hour drive back to Kelowna, and I was thrown up the entire time. And it was just awful. And I didn't know that you could go through withdrawal if you stop taking your withdrawal medication. So it's just something that he always explained to me, but I didn't believe it. It's like I didn't think you could go through alcohol withdrawal. And that's what caused one of my seizures. And sorry, I start to ramble when I get nervous. But I think having that choice, but getting everything explained to me, helped me make that decision. And a lot of it was explained to me, and I didn't believe in it at first, and then I learned the hard way that listen to your doctor, basically. Sorry. starting to get a little emotional now that I'm reliving all this stuff.
That's okay, Mike. I think you came across some like really, really important points in what you said. And I think like you mentioned it takes a team. And I agree with that like 100%. It's, you know, it's me and the provider, you know, my nurse, and it's the pharmacist, and it's
Yeah,
you know, all the
everybody.
supports that go into it. It's not just one person that makes this successful, right? And like I'm really passionate about this because like OAT has changed my life too, and it probably saved my life as well, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it's the little things too. I've been advocating a lot lately that like, you know, when I got onto OAT, like little things were missed, right? Like I didn't feel like I had much options in what I like in the medication that was provided to me. There was a lot of pressure to choose one medication and nothing was really explained. And I think that, you know, you just said that having it explained to you helped you make those decisions and feel empowered in your choices. Like,
Yes.
and that's what started you off to be successful. And I think it's just like, yeah, really empowering what you just shared. So thank you.
There's so many options now. So I started with the Caden, and then once I got better with that, then we reduced, and then I did the that one with the shot we were talking about.
Yeah.
Supplicate, yeah. I got approved for that, and I didn't have to go for my last one, actually. I felt so much better, and once it disintegrated and did its thing, and I loved that one because I didn't have to take 37 pills every day. And I really did like it. And my last one, I didn't even need to go in, but I just went in to see Baldwin just to thank him because, and it's when I went just to get my other prescription filled the other day, the pharmacists, I walked in and I said, I need to get a prescription refilled. And they said, okay, name. I said, Mike Merritt. And Mike? Is that you? You look so good. And it's those little things that made you feel so good. And the other two pharmacists came out and they're like, is that Mike? We were just asking about you and we hadn't seen you in so long. And it's those little things telling me that they were proud of me for sticking with it and doing good. I quit smoking. I quit all the drugs. It just made me feel good that they remembered and they had my back the entire 2 years they had to put up with me. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Erin, would you like to comment on why you got on OAT and if there was any pressure or if you were offered medication choices?
Yeah, I actually, when I first got on it, I did feel pressure to get on it. I was on probation at the time, and basically my probation officer told me to get on Suboxone. So that wasn't like a great experience starting it. I definitely don't think that anyone should be pressured to get on a medication like this. So that wasn't great. But then when I got off probation, I got off it and then I made my own choice to go on methadone. And that was a lot better. I definitely felt like that was my choice. And like also just over the years, I've noticed a huge change in the way the service providers sort of treat me. I do feel like they like take the time to discuss side effects and like sort of like what you touched on, Jessica. I feel like they really like take the time to make sure that I'm making the right choice and that I feel like respected and everything. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really awesome, right? Because and I don't mean to like be throwing my community under the bus or anything, but I'm in a rural and remote community, I would say. And so we haven't there's been a lot of change in access to OAT, right? So I think in the chaos and confusion that a lot of people haven't felt empowered in their choices. But yeah, I just thank you very much for that, because I believe being empowered to be able to make like feel like we're making the decision to do this, because it's a big commitment, right? Like, you know, especially if you're getting carries every day to go to the pharmacy, and, you know, like booking that into your schedule, like it's a lot. And, you know, and you have to stay on it, because if you don't go to the pharmacy that day, as Mike highlighted, you'll get sick, right? So, and that's not where, you know, and being sick is really traumatizing, right? So yeah, I guess that was it's back over to Angie for the next question.
Thanks, Jessica. The next question we have here for the panel is, what are some of the main difficulties or barriers you have faced when accessing OAT in the past, or I would say accessing just general care, and how were these difficulties overcome? And we may have touched on a few of those things already, but
I think from a parent perspective, I think that Steve was shamed by his drug use. I certainly didn't help that. Back in the day, he started his drug use when he was 14. He died when he was 32. And during his teenage years, it was all about tough love. The message we heard was, be cruel to be kind. To a kid who's struggling and has mental health issues, substance use issues, trauma issues, we inadvertently, as parents who tried to follow that example, created stigma in our children. We made it impossible for them to feel comfortable in accessing and being honest about treatment plans. I regret that immensely. I can't go back and change it. I wish I could. But we expected our kids to take responsibility and accountability for their actions. And when you are in the throes of substance use and have a parent who doesn't understand it, it's a tough road to hoe. So, you know, I feel like I damaged him. He was already damaged, but I damaged him more in my erroneous messaging. So I don't know how you reach out to parents, but I certainly believe that, I mean, we are accountable for our actions too. And I think the messaging, we need more love and support and kindness.
thanks, Arlene. Anyone else want to jump in on that question?
I'll just say one thing to Arlene. No, it's not no parent knows how to deal with it. I was scared mostly of my parents finding out, but my dad still to this day asks me questions. He just wanted to learn. He used to be a hard ass. You know, it was like, he always loved me. I knew that. It was all good like that way, but he was a hard ass. You screw up, you take responsibility for your, but he started to learn talking to my counselors, being there with my doctor's appointments, that, and then instead of getting mad at me, he wanted to understand and he wanted to talk to me. And that took a lot for him. He grew up in BC with 3 brothers and 2 sisters, and a grandpa that worked at the mill, and you got the belt and blah 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 blah. And he has become such a softie, and he just wanted to understand what I was going through. And when I explained to him, he just hugged me and said, "I'm so sorry you have to go through this all the time." Because I've also got a borderline personality disorder and bipolar, or whatever they want to call it. So I have my lows and my highs, and I'm on medication for that, which is working great. But I think a big thing is you can't blame yourself. It's not your fault, and you just need to just try to learn about it and understand. And you didn't do anything wrong. You just did what you know, and that's all you can do. Like, as parents, we're learning as we go because every generation is different. Like, I don't know my nieces and nephews, but all I know is they like to play, and I don't have to be in the same room to play video games with them anymore. And I'm getting to know my little nephew, and he's binary or whatever that means. And I don't care. I just am there to support him. And you can't blame yourself. For my brother-in-law blames himself for something, and I just said, dude, that's just who he is, and you got to accept it and just be there for him, listen to him, understand, and not judge him. And so, but I don't think you did anything wrong, and you shouldn't blame yourself for anything, because we're all learning as we go. Every day is a new day.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mike.
All right.
Carla, I think I see your hand up.
Hi, sure. So the main difficulties were originally the withdrawal and starting and getting on the right dose. I had asked my doctor if I was able to drive. After figuring out the dose, the doctor said yes. After the dose was administered, so I went to leave. I ended up passing out behind the wheel of a company work truck in a school zone. Thank goodness there was no kids around. I hit a telephone pole and totaled the vehicle and was taken to the hospital. I was given more and discharged without any follow-up. But other difficulties were the amount of tests, the trips to the pharmacy, the anxiety, discrimination, waiting at clinics, doing the samples, seeing others withdrawing or on substances, the treatment of some people, the wait. I've spent hours and hours waiting, but this was before the shot. The difficulties that were overcome is not having to go, like the shot was, the Sublocade is life-changing for me. I don't have to go to the pharmacy daily. I don't have to worry about missing dose. Difficulties, were resolved. So, I mean, for me, the wait times can be really extensive and hard to go through at the clinics. So, thank you.
Thanks, Carla. I have to agree, the wait times sometimes, especially like, because I am a daily dispense person, so I go every day, and for a period there, you never knew, you could be waiting anywhere between 5 minutes to an hour, right? And when you're busy and have life going on, but it's a commitment that you have to make, and so you just do it, right? So thanks for sharing. Erin, would you like to comment on if there were any barriers?
Yeah, I mean, I think having to go in every day is definitely a big barrier, especially I found like if I was traveling or something like that, like having to call and switch the pharmacy and then having to wait for them to bring the prescription in. Sometimes they might not even like have it ready that day, so then I'll miss a day. So that's like pretty difficult sometimes. And then also I think just when I was younger, sort of being a teenager or a youth, I think like some doctors were sort of hesitant to prescribe me. And also, like I remember when I wanted to go to treatment, I found out that there was no treatment for youth that took people on OAT. So I think like just making sure it's accessible to everyone, including like young people or people who you might not expect to be on OAT is really important.
Thank you so much for bringing up the youth perspective on this, because I strongly feel that it's this perspective that needs to be addressed that we oftentimes totally miss, right? Like, and youth is, I'm supporting some youth in the community right now where, it's a tricky thing, and we're scared to go forward and ask for the help we need because of like the fear of being said no to. Sorry, my dog's going nuts. But yeah, thank you for sharing the youth perspective on that. And youth need to have access to this as well. And it really limits us to where, I think being able to even like, lots of us, I'm a person who moved from another province. Like I came from Alberta to BC, and most of my family is in Alberta. So, if I want to see my family and go to Alberta where they don't carry, the prescriptions that I'm on because I'm on Canadian and I have access to pharmaceutical alternatives, I need to then get carries. And even the stress and the tension that I get in my chest from even thinking about having to ask the doctor for carries out of fear of being said no to will it eats me alive. And thankfully I have a provider who has said yes and has acknowledged that, spending time with family is important, right? But just, you never know, and you can't plan trips, or you can't, and that's a part of self-care as well. And I honestly don't feel, because of our substance use, that we should be, and when we're, on treatment, and especially for people who are doing well, right? Like, going to the daily dispense every day and have been doing well for a period of time, like we should be worked with and not worked against. And so thank you for highlighting that point.
Thank you.
I
Yeah,
just
for
wanted
sure.
to say to Aaron, thank you for that too, because I've gone through that where getting carries can be very difficult. And thank you for Dr. Baldwin, because he would put on my prescription. He's allowed a 2-week carry, so I didn't have to keep going in every day. Because just like you, Jessica, I came from Alberta in Calgary, and I have my fiance's there with her kids, my sister's there. So going there, it would be difficult. And he would give me care. And that's what I was talking about that last time, where I had run out. I didn't, and then I had withdrawals the entire ride home, the entire bus ride. I couldn't even get out and have a cigarette off the bus. I wanted a cigarette so bad, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't move. And then when I got picked up in Salmon Arm, I was throwing up the entire ride home. And it's so important that, and I agree with you with the family thing, and you need to go see family. You can't, it's so hard to go every day. Like, luckily for me, I had supportive parents that took me every day, but not everybody has that. They would pick me and drive me every day. And then when we started getting I'd get a week carry. And then he said, okay, you're doing really well. So he'd give me a 2-week carry. And then when I'd tell him I'm going for a couple weeks to Calgary, he would help me out. And I think that is very important, that people be able to get carries and not have to feel like they're asking their doctor for something that they don't need. They're just, I don't want the doctor to judge me and think, oh, I'm just trying to get as many as I can. And I think that's very important. So thank you for sharing that, because I with Aaron and Jessica, I know exactly how you feel with that.
I do see Heather Spence back on the line. Heather, I'm not sure if you want to jump in and add anything. I don't know whether you can hear us, or we're just talking about barriers and challenges accessing care, more specifically OAT. Heather?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks.
I think for, yeah, sorry. I think for myself, I'm not an old, I don't access oat, but my partner did for the last 2 years. And, you know, just echoing what everyone else is saying about having that support, it was really difficult for me to live through that process with him while he was struggling, figuring out what medication worked and what plan worked for him. But, you know, I run a peer support group, and I see we actually had Dr. Baldwin come to our office space in West Kelowna, and it just gives people hope when you have a caring and compassionate doctor that actually cares about people and tries to support them with their plans of being on the oath. And he's actually coming back to our space to try and work with some of the people that have barriers such as transportation, of getting to Kelowna, because there's no services in West Kelowna. And also being Indigenous, you're stigmatized twice as hard from what I can see and from what I feel being Indigenous myself. It's hard to access. You get turned away, and just because we've been turned away so much in society from everything, it's hard to take that step to help each other. Those are some of the barriers that I see as a person that supports people trying to get onto the oath, and for my partner as well, with him being on the oath program.
Thanks, Heather. I think you covered some important points there as well around the caring and compassionate, and how that makes such a difference in people wanting to stay on their program and continue working. But travel is another thing in rural and remote communities. I was working with somebody here recently, and the situation is that for her to get her oat daily, and she lived in a community that was about half an hour outside of the main community. For her to get her daily oat, she was living with a partner who was abusive to, she was getting beat up, but it was that or be out on the streets versus, if we could figure something out in these rural and remote communities where, we can do deliveries or something like that, where people can stay where it might be safer for them, where there is possible recovery and being able to stay on these medications versus that's a really important point to highlight, I think, in these smaller communities. And the Indigenous stigma, I think, I really need to acknowledge my privilege as a white female, and I recently lost my mom, and I think about how privileged I was to have my mom in my life, because she was a huge supporter, right? It was really compassionate and, did the lovingly detached, but understood harm reduction and was not stigmatizing or judgmental towards me when I had relapsed, right? But many of the people I also run, Heather and I both do these drug user networks. And even here in my community, the majority of the people that we're supporting through this drug user network, and they're the most marginalized people in the community, are Indigenous, and this is again a direct result of colonialism and residential schools. And, we need to take an Indigenous approach towards recovery and what that looks like, and really indigenize harm reduction and these programs that are available as life-saving services. So how are we on time, Angie?
We're a few minutes over. I can't believe how quickly that time went. I don't know whether we want to try for one more question for another 5 minutes just before you wrap this section up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I think the next question here, why don't we do in your opinion, what can the system do better in order to care for those living with opioid use disorder. I think that's a good way to wrap it up. So if anybody wants to start.
Can I ask a question with a question?
Of course.
Okay, so my question to you is, because I don't actually know, we're talking about OAT treatment for a certain population of folk that Stephen used alone, died alone. He was secretive. He didn't want anyone to know. How are we incorporating or programs for folks like Steve? Are they interested in an OAT program? I think he would have been, however. And how do you move forward in that direction for another aspect of substance use?
I think it's a good question because, I believe that there's a whole substance use disorder doesn't discriminate and it can affect anybody. And we're seeing men in the trades, right? Like people who are using a loan that, wouldn't be that person who uses drugs that's out on the street, right? Like where that stigma of this idea of what we've been taught a person who uses substances is. And, I really, with interior health, and I can't speak too much on this, right? But through my experience with interior health, like a little while ago, they put out like they did an ad series or a media campaign around OAT. And it was directly, the population that they were going for were like, guys who are working out. So, they had the ad at a guy working out at the gym, right? And they were really directed at that, like not, that other population of people who use substances, the men in the trades, the men, the middle-aged men who are dying alone, right? Like, so, it's a hard for me through the drug user advocacy that we do. It's been really hard to engage that population because of the stigma that goes around the criminalization of substances. Now, I think with decriminalization coming for the 2-year exemption that we have starting in January, it's not going to stop deaths by any means, right? Like, that's not what decrim is. We need a safe supply to stop the deaths. But hopefully what decrim will do will restart over time. It's not going to happen overnight, but start reducing that stigma towards the substance use. Because one of the things I advocate for is that, we got to stop trying to change people who use substances into people who don't use substances and just authentically accept that person where they're at. Right. For me, I needed a safe supply. I wasn't ready to get onto OAT, right? Like, and I just needed to be using substances, but I needed that support and a clean supply. And when I was given that and given a little bit of support, that's when I was able to make the choice to go on to OAT, right? So I'm really hoping that, hopefully decrim doesn't turn around and bite us in the ass. And now the cops have a reason to arrest people over the 2.5 grams. And it's just going to cause more chaos and stigma, right? I really hope that it will create an area where people do feel comfortable to come out and say, hey, guess what? I'm using fentanyl. Can you please come check on me? Please make sure that there's a naloxone kit in the house, right? When we can start having those basic conversations around substance use and start really reducing that stigma around what substance use is, because people use for a variety of reasons. And a lot of people, self-medicating for ADHD or whatever it is, like it could be anything. And just having that like real compassion to just like not put the judgment on the drug or the way the person's using the drug or the person who is using the substance, and just just being, right? So I really always hope that like we're taking that approach, and it's a pretty bold approach sometimes, but you know, and it can be, as you know, it's been highlighted here, there's challenges, right? Like people who use drugs, we've been taught that we need to lie about these things, right? Because of the, you know, I had a urine screen one time, and because my body metabolizes opioids differently, Oxycontin showed up on my urine screen, and the doctor cut my dose in half overnight, like, you know, and told me that, like, because I'm using intravenously, that how do I even make it to work during the day? And it was like, just, you know, but not taking that time to sit with me and ask what's really going on, right? Like I was losing my mom, and my partner was accessing the street supply. It was a tough time in my life, right? I needed support. So yeah, I really hope that we get to that point that people feel comfortable talking about, you know, their substance use without the stigma. So
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks, Jessica. I'm going to give you a quick hug.
thanks.
Um, like I said, I feel like, you know, ideally we'd have a lot more time to, you know, continue on with this discussion. And I hope that we can bring you guys back in the future to share more at some of our future sessions. And I just wanted to say again, thank you so much for joining today. I feel like it's such a valuable piece to hear your stories and your insights and your experiences. And I feel like it really brings us back to, you know, why we're doing Boost and why we're, you know, trying to optimize care, and brings us back to the core of the work. So I wanted to say thank you so much to our panel members.